Lots of articles have come out in the last day or so saying that there are big problems with the projected Dark Phoenix box office. Here's an article here. X-Men Dark Phoenix expected to bomb at the box office. Box Office Pro is one of the major film projection companies, and that's where most of these articles seem to be getting their information from. They are saying right now, and it is very early, that it might only get a $40 million box office opening weekend. Some of them are saying maybe it'll get somewhere around a mid-50, so 55 maybe, and both of those figures are pretty bad for an X-Men film. When we take a look at the domestic box office records on Box Office Mojo, if we look at number 203, we have the original X-Men film from 2000. Okay, it is the lowest opening weekend for any of the X-Men films, the first X-Men film. It got $54.4 million. So the absolute upper reach right now for what they're saying is the projected opening weekend for Dark Phoenix, which is exceptionally early to project this early, so this can all change. But right now they're saying that it'll basically be the worst performing X-Men ever. It'll be probably worse than this $54 million here. And this $54 million is obviously not inflation adjusted. Okay, so when we do a real comparison, and take a little look on Box Office Mojo, let's see, where does X-Men fit in with its inflation-adjusted weekend box office total? So it's number 124. It's the 124th biggest opening weekend ever with $91 million. And so if you put inflation in, we can see it's going to basically be nearly double what they're projecting this X-Men Dark Phoenix might be starting at. So $40 million to maybe $55 million versus $91 million. So not even close. It's not looking good for Dark Phoenix right now. When we look at what else had around about a $40 million opening weekend, inflation adjusted, we can see we're looking around about the 550s, so 550-ish biggest films. That's what you get for about a $40 million opening. We've got Cable Guy is in there at 555. We have Back to the Future Part 3, number 547. We've got Jackass number 2. Number 566, Ready Player One, 563. So a few known films in this list, but not films that did very well at the box office. And if we take a look at the upper range of the estimate, if we look around about the $50 million mark, we can see Bohemian Rhapsody is there. It's yellow because it's still in theaters. That's what Box Office Mojo does. It puts the little yellow thing around films that are currently still open. We've got The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, so that may do better than what Dark Phoenix is looking at. American Wedding, another Jim Carrey film there. The Mask, Star Trek Generations. So that's the kind of upper limit that they're talking about. At this stage, they think that Dark Phoenix might do. At this stage, it has an estimated budget of around about $200 million. So that's not really good news either, okay? So it's got a $200 million budget. They're probably going to spend another $100 to $200 million in marketing. That means you've got something like $300 or $400 million you've got to make back. You might only get half of that back from the theaters. And so you're kind of looking at needing something in the neighborhood of a $600 to $800 million worldwide run to break even. So with these early numbers, that won't happen, and the film will be an absolute major flop. Okay, here's this article again. I think the start of the problems are really what we have here in this article. So not what the article says, what we can see on the trailer. Okay, this is the star of the Dark Phoenix, the same actress that plays Sansa in the Game of Thrones. Probably the only reason she got the job, because she has a little bit of name recognition. And it may not be nice to say, but she's not very good to look at. This is who originally played the Phoenix, or Dark Phoenix, or Miss Marvel, is it? Marvel Girl, Jean Grey. There's not really a comparison between how the two of these actresses look. I don't rate the acting ability of the current actress in the role, and she's not really being cast in a visual medium to be somebody that's attractive. So they went with name recognition a few years ago when they first put her into the younger X-Men reboot, or whatever they're calling it, the semi-reboot. But I think that there's just the start of some of the problems. The casting, I'd say there's some issues with the casting of the new X-Men. This guy here is the new Cyclops, or the newish Cyclops. He's been in some films already. It doesn't look like a superhero to me. This isn't Cyclops. So I don't know why he's been cast. I don't know who decided on the casting. This isn't someone that should be one of the lead people, in my opinion, in a superhero film. This is the original Cyclops. That looks like someone that should legitimately be able to be in a superhero film, and he's been in several different superhero films, so hopefully he has the look. So the casting of replacing this guy with his younger version, it looks a bit soft, a bit doughy. It doesn't look like he should be solving any kind of crimes or chasing down supervillains. And again, the actual actress playing the Phoenix, I don't think that's helping the cause, okay? I don't think that's helping the box office. I like the younger guy they have playing the younger Magneto. I think he does a really good job. The guy that plays Charles Xavier, I don't really have a big problem with him, except every time I see him in a film, unfortunately, I think of this. Okay, that's him in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe playing the Fawn. And that's what I see whenever I see him anywhere. So just for me personally, I don't really like him in any film at all, because that's who I think of. He's typecast in my mind as this kind of pathetic, shirtless creature. Unfortunately, I still think he does an alright job as Charles Xavier, but that's what I'm thinking of when I see this guy on screen. Now, there is some good news. A lot of the projections, they do basically a lot of surveys on social media. They do a lot of sampling of social media, and they try to quantify how much people are talking on social media about films. And they try to decide that if you get X number of people talking about it, that'll project to X number of sort of box office proceeds. That's what they use. They're very complicated formulas, but that's what they try to get for this sort of rough ballpark, and then they get advanced ticket sales and all kinds of things like that. But right now, Endgame, I think, is really just eating up the oxygen right now. So, yeah, there may not be a lot of chatter about Dark Phoenix online, but I think Endgame is just dominating the whole superhero space, and until Endgame's released, and probably a month after it's released, you're just going to get nothing but Endgame. So, having trailers out on all these sort of things for Dark Phoenix. I did see a trailer for Dark Phoenix both when I saw Shazam and when I saw Captain Marvel, so they had trailers out for that then. They're out and about, but I think Endgame is just sucking up the oxygen, and so although they're projecting right now these catastrophic numbers, again, it's going to look like it's going to lose money, which is a terrible flop, especially for an X-Men film. But I think maybe it might not be as bad as it seems, because Endgame is basically steering all the conversations towards itself. So we'll see what happens after Endgame launches, if there's any kind of revised projections up. This is still very early, but the early projections are bad. So things are looking very, very, very bad for Dark Phoenix. There's also some speculation on whether or not there's going to be a lot of reworking, recasting, because Disney now owns X-Men, and they'll presumably be brought back under the Marvel Studios umbrella. Will they be just relaunching them again? Are they able to work them in? Are they going to start fresh? What's going to happen? There may be just thinking this iteration's done, we don't care about it, and I do think that's part of it as well. People don't care about these characters here. The other films that had them in, again, I like the new Magneto, he was good in it, and they kind of worked Wolverine into some of them. They got a bit of Hugh Jackman in, but I think generally speaking, the rest of the cast isn't that great. I don't rate them at all. The other person they've sort of shoehorned in is the woman that plays Mystique. And she's blue most of the time, you can't tell who she is, but she's just really riding on a kind of Hunger Games fame, sort of similar to the way that Sansa's been shoehorned in. They're just getting in actresses that maybe aren't fantastic in the roles, but they have name recognition, so I don't think that really helps. But anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the future sort of projections. It's very, very early days, but right now, absolutely terrible news for the next X-Men film. It is projected to make a terrible loss, basically. It is going to make a loss if these projections hold. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.